welcome back. Today I'm on the floor and we're doing a thing. Let's rewind a little bit. In 2020, like towards the end of 2020, I did a series of videos where I basically went through every single one of my books, every single shelf that I own, went through every book on every shelf, and I talked about whether or not I had read them and wanted to keep them, read them and wanted to get rid of them, not read them but was still interested, not read them but was no longer interested so I wanted to unhaul them, or not read them but wasn't sure if I was still interested, so I was bumping them to what I called the top of the TBR, and I gave myself a time frame basically to read those books. Fast forward to now, it has been over a year at this point, close to a year and a half, and I've never done an update. I never talked about like how that project ended up going, and so that's what I'm going to do today. Well, sort of. I'm going to come clean and tell you that I was not super diligent about reading the books that were at the top of my TBR. The whole purpose of me putting those books at the top was because I wasn't really sure if I was still interested, and if I wasn't going to read them in like the allotted amount of time, then there was no reason for me to hold on to them, because if I wasn't going to read them in the time frame that I set for myself, then I probably was never going to pick them up. I still have 23 books that at the time of me filming those videos I put at the top of my TBR. Those were like my top priority books that I haven't read. I still haven't read, and I also haven't unhauled them. It's been well over the time period for some of them, almost a year for some of them and a few months for others, and 23 of them are still sitting on my shelves unread. What I thought I'd do today is, in an effort to kind of get through some of these books, to decide if I'm actually still interested in them, or if I've just held on to them for nostalgia, or because I think I'm interested but maybe I don't quite remember what they're about. I thought maybe today I would do a little try a chapter of all the books that I at one point said were at the top of my TBR. I don't have a comprehensive list of all the books that I put at the top of my TBR. I don't know how many of them I ended up reading versus the 23 that I didn't read, but it really doesn't matter at this point. What matters is 23 books that I said I was going to read or get rid of within a year are still on my shelves. So today we're going to be doing a try a chapter. I'm gonna try not to make it a super long video. I know that try a chapter tags can be pretty long, and obviously with 23 books to get through, and actually I'm only gonna sample 20 of them here and I'll explain why in a minute. But I'm going to group them in like groups of 5, so I'm going to like read 5 books and then I'll come back and talk about those 5. So it won't be a super long video. It's going to be a quicker video than what I'm sure you're imagining. Let's talk about the 3 that I'm not going to be trying a chapter of right now. First off, I've got The Paper Menagerie by Ken Liu, and the reason I'm not going to do a try a chapter of this one is because this is short stories, so it's not really chapters. Maybe at some point I'll do kind of like a little short story sampler and read a few of these and see if it's something that I still want to read, but for now this is going to stay on my TBR. Also, I've got The Kite Runner by Helene Hossini. I did actually start reading this last year. I read the first 50 pages or so and I ended up putting it down, not because I wanted to DNF it forever, but because I emotionally wasn't really prepared to read this book. So this one is staying on my TBR because I know I still want to read it. I just want to be in the right headspace to read it. And then finally, The Blind Assassin by Margaret Atwood, which I actually did a try a chapter tag years ago, several years ago at this point, and read a little bit of this one and decided to keep it at that time, and I never like actually prioritize picking it up, but I think I'm just gonna unhaul this one outright. I don't know. I'm gonna think about it while I film this video, but I think this one's going to be the first one that I just get rid of. Okay, I've got my 4 stacks of 5. I tried to group them based on what I think the books are about, kind of like books that are similar to each other, but really at the end of the day I don't know, so I'm just going to go with it and we're gonna see. Let's start with this stack right here. These are the books that I think are like classics, modern classics. This stack maybe is the books that I think might have the biggest impact on me. I don't know. Like I said, no rhyme or reason to the way that I grouped them. So we've got White Oleander by Janet Fitch, The Goldfinch by Donna Tartt, Gone with the Wind by Margaret Mitchell, The Namesake by Jhumpa Lahiri, and No Country for Old Men by Cormac McCarthy. So enjoy this sped up time lapse of me reading a little bit of these 5 books. finished my first selection of 5. I started off with No Country for Old Men by Cormac McCarthy. Absolutely, I'm going to be keeping this. The first section was so immediately gripping that I will probably pick this up. Like, I think I want it to be my next read after I finish my current read, because I really liked the beginning of it, and I'm excited to keep going. If the rest of the book is as engaging as the first couple chapters were, then I think I'm going to love this. Next up, I read The Namesake by Jhumpa Lahiri, or I read the first bit of the first chapter, and I actually think this one, the main character is the son of the characters introduced in the first chapter. I think I'm going to keep this one, and I'm going to try to get to it this year, soon, like soon-ish, because I think it's going to be a really good book, but I don't know. I don't know how I'm gonna feel about that one. Next up, I did Gone with the Wind by Margaret Mitchell, and I want to read this. Like, I just think like reading this would be such an accomplishment. It's a classic. So many people seem to love it, but it's so long. I'm gonna read it eventually. I'm gonna hang on to it, and I'm gonna try to get to it eventually. And then I've got The Goldfinch by Donna Tartt, which I honestly think I'm going to adore. I really love The Secret History. So many people love this one. It's all about like art, and there's like a mystery, I think, involved. So I'm going to hang on to it, and I'm gonna try to read it soon. I'm gonna try to read all these soon. Any of the books that I keep, I'm gonna try to read before the end of this year, but this one I'm gonna try to pick up soon. The only one I'm like super on the fence about is White Oleander by Janet Fitch, because the first chapter did not immediately grip me. I went on Goodreads and I read like some reviews of all the books. I kept seeing like you have to give it 100 pages, you have to give it a couple hundred pages to really get into it, and that the ending is worth it. I just am not super into books that I have to like dedicate a lot of time to get into. Like if you're not going to immediately grip me in the first 50 to 100 pages, then I don't really want to waste my time. I'm really on the fence about this one, and I would really like to hear some thoughts, because right now I'm leaning towards unhauling it. So those are the first 5. Let's move on to this section here. Don't really know why these books are grouped together, but I've got Erotic Stories for Punjabi Widows, Did You Ever Have a Family by Bill Clegg, The Interestings by Meg Wolitzer, My Brilliant Friend by Elena Ferrante, and Orphan Train by Christina Baker Klein. Okay, finished up the second selection, the second round. I started with Orphan Train by Christina Baker Klein, and as I was reading this, I quickly remembered that I've actually already done a try a chapter featuring this book, because I was pretty familiar with the beginning of the story. I don't think I'm gonna hang on to this book, and here's why. I think I will enjoy this, and I think I probably will still read it, but I do also have the audiobook on Audible, and so I think I'm gonna pass along the physical book. Next up, I did The Interestings by Meg Wolitzer. This is a book that I really want to read and I really want to enjoy, but I was not gripped by the first chapter, which was 36 pages. I went on Goodreads and I read some reviews of it, and it's pretty mixed, and so I'm not sure if I want to hang on to this. It's been on my TBR for so long. I want to read it and I want to like it, but I just don't know. If I wasn't immediately gripped by the beginning. Next is My Brilliant Friend by Elena Ferrante. I think I am definitely gonna hold on to this one. I was hooked from the like little prologue that I read. I did read some reviews on Goodreads that says that it's kind of slow, and obviously this is the first book in a 4-part series, and it's not a completed story till you read the entire thing. I'm hesitant to like commit to a big long series, but I still think I'm gonna hold on to it. I think I'm going to read it and see how I feel. Did You Ever Have a Family by Bill Clegg. I read the first chapter, obviously that's what this is, and it doesn't give you a lot. Like, the first chapter doesn't give you a lot compared to what the synopsis gives you. It's a pretty short book. It's like less than 300 pages, or just at 300 pages, so I'm gonna hold on to this one and I'm gonna read it. And then finally, I've got Erotic Stories for Punjabi Widows, which I don't know. I'm a little on the fence about this one as well. I think it could be good. This to me seems like a book that I could read and I would enjoy in the moment, but it wouldn't stick with me. You know, it's like a fun, quick read, but it wouldn't be something that lasted in my brain long term. I'm a little on the fence about this one as well, but I'm kind of leaning towards getting rid of this one. The next section that I'm going to tackle is the historical fiction section. I'm excited about all of these, so I'm interested to see how I feel about the first chapters of each of them. So we've got Belcanto by Ann Patchett, A Spool of Blue Thread by Ann Tyler, Honor by Elif Shafak, The Narrow Road to the Deep North by Richard Flanagan, and The Luminaries by Eleanor Catton. I just realized that 2 of the 5 in this category, or this section, this set of books were Man Booker Prize winners. So that's interesting. All right, I've completed the next 5 books, and this is the most promising category yet. I started with The Luminaries, and this is a massive book, but I was immediately gripped by just the first like 10 to 15 pages, whatever it was that I ended up reading. I want to keep going with it. I think it's going to be a really interesting mystery type of story. It's historical fiction, like I said, set during the gold rush in New Zealand in like the 1860s, and it follows a group of men who are trying to solve a couple of mysteries that have recently occurred. I think it's going to be great. It has a fantastic reviews on Goodreads, so I am definitely keeping that. Next is The Narrow Road to the Deep North, which is a World War II historical fiction novel. I'm interested in it and I am gonna hold on to it, but this is gonna be like, I gotta read it or I gotta get rid of it, because I wasn't like totally gripped by the beginning, but something about it is just pulling me in, so I'm gonna definitely keep it and try to read it. Next, I read Honor. I read the first chapter of Honor by Elif Shafak. The first chapter of this is so gripping, and I am so excited to keep this and keep going with it. So this one is for sure staying on my TBR. A Spool of Blue Thread by Ann Tyler is a family saga following several members of a family throughout the years. I believe we get to learn about how the mom and dad met and fell in love, and then we get to see them raise their family, and I think it's going to be excellent. It has fantastic reviews. I was very interested in just the beginning, so I'm gonna be keeping that for sure. The only one I'm not 100% about is this one, Belcanto by Ann Patchett. This has been on my TBR for so long. Even before I bought it and put it on my physical TBR, I have wanted to read this book. The first chapter was not super gripping, not super engaging, but in general, I've just been so interested in this book for so long that it feels wrong to get rid of it. Give me your opinions, because I could be swayed either way to keep or get rid of it. Moving on to the final selection, I've got the last 5 books here. I've got The Book of Strange New Things by Michelle Faber, The Book of M by Pang Shepard, The Gap of Time by Jeanette Winterson, 1,000 Splendid Suns by Helene Hossini, and finally Salvage the Bones by Jasmine Ward. Let's get to reading. All right, and that concludes reading the first chapter of all the books that were on the top of my TBR. Let's just go through this last little section real quick, starting with The Book of Strange New Things. First of all, this book is beautiful. I was super compelled by the first chapter, so I am going to hold on to it and read it. Next, I read the first chapter of 1,000 Splendid Suns by Helene Hossini. This one I think is going to be another like pretty emotional read, but I'm going to keep it and I am going to read it because I think it's going to be good. Next, I read the first chapter of The Gap of Time, which actually I read the first chapter, which was basically just a summary of The Winter's Tale. Then I read like the first couple pages of the actual first chapter, and I think this is going to be a pretty similar, like pretty close rendition of the story, but I am really excited about reading this. And then I read the first chapter of Salvage the Bones by Jasmine Ward, which, to be honest, the first 10 pages were rough. Like, it was hard to read and a little bit disgusting, but I think it's going to explore some really interesting topics and themes in this book, so I'm gonna hold on to this. Everybody loves Jesmyn Ward, and I've only ever heard good things about it. And then I read the first chapter of The Book of M by Pink Shepherd, which I also really enjoyed. Actually, I read the first couple chapters, which I have read in the past a couple of years ago. Again, super compelled by the story. This author just came out with a new book that I'm also equally interested in, so I'm gonna read this one, and then I'm hopefully gonna pick up her new book. But yeah, I'm gonna definitely hang on to this one and get to it sooner rather than later. So of the 23 books that were on my top of the TBR from my Unhauling My Bookshelves project, I am gonna unhaul 6 of them. I have been sitting here thinking about these that I said I was like unsure about, and I just have decided I'm just gonna haul them. If I change my mind, I can always get them from the library, but these literally have been sitting on my shelves unread for so long. I'm not as excited about them anymore, and I'm just gonna let them go. So of the 23 that I had, I still have 17. I don't know if you could call this video successful, but I had a good time filming it. I really like doing the try a chapter experiment every once in a while. Knowing a little bit more about the stories now has made me more excited about picking them up. So to that end, I'd call this video a success. Whether or not I actually get around to reading these books, we'll have to wait and see. So I guess that's gonna be it for this video. Let me know down in the comments if you've read any of the books that I mentioned in this video and what you thought about them. Are there any of the books that I said I'm keeping that you think I'm absolutely going to love and think I should prioritize sooner rather than later? Are there any that you absolutely hated and think I won't like? I'd really love to know that as well. And of the ones that I'm getting rid of, let me know. Am I making a mistake? I'd really love to know that too. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you again very soon. Bye.